Hi, I'm Gail Andersen. This is Mentoring Moments for Moms. I promised you that I would be interviewing all of my kids, and today I have the privilege of interviewing my third son, Jesse. So I hope you're joining us. Hope you're ready to glean some things from him. If you like what we're talking about, please tap on the screen, give me some hearts. And if you want to share this broadcast, hi there, Jessica. Just swipe to the right and you'll be able to share it with your followers. Saw you on there too, Crystal. Thank you for joining us. It's so nice to be here. Just a couple things I want to say about Jesse. He's a very rational person, very disciplined, very discerning, and believe it or not, he was one of my harder ones to homeschool, but harder from the sense of he was always ahead of me, ahead of the game, and keeping him going in school and not motivated, but giving him new things to learn. I felt like I was always behind the 8 ball. It was interesting. He started reading cereal boxes before he turned 5, and I'm like, oh, I think we should start kindergarten. So it was kind of interesting, but he graduated from college probably a few days after he turned 21. He was always just ahead of the game and able to learn things and memorize amazingly. But right now, Jesse is the executive project manager for Church on the Move. But what I've asked him to talk about today is just reflections on family life. So there's some real specific things that he's excited about talking about, and I'm just gonna give it to him.
Cool. Well, thanks, Mom, and first of all, thank you for raising me to be the man that I am. Honestly, a lot of the stuff that you all get to hear on Periscope and blogs and all that is the real deal. It's not. I read them and sometimes I go, yeah, I already know that. Do people not know that? I mean, that's sort of the way that I look at it. Is like, cool. This is kind of standard stuff, right? And that's what we grew up with. So what you're hearing from is the real deal. So thank you. The first thing I wanted to talk about was just that, and this was a frustrating thing when we were kids, but and this would have been before all of iPod Touch and iPhones and all that. But minimal screen time was a big deal in our household. We didn't have a video game system. We didn't watch much TV or many movies. It just didn't happen. And it was frustrating. I mean, you'd go to a friend's house and they'd have a video game system or whatever. But it was interesting when we would borrow something. I mean, it was like chaos in the house as far as all bets are off. Everybody is just like nuts for this thing.
Let me just interject something here. Since we were homeschooling, it was really important to us that we not always have the option to be watching TV or doing game time. So for school, we decided no TV from 8 in the morning on Monday until 4 o'clock on Friday. And that did not mean that they overdosed on the weekend. It just meant that was when it was an option. And it made it so much easier because you guys weren't coming and asking.
Right.
The rule was there, it was set.
Yeah.
And that was so nice. And as far as the game time, there were certain of you boys who were so focused on those Game Boys when you were playing that you were pushing aside and being mean to your brothers and sisters. So I wasn't going to have it.
Screen time is a stimulant for the brain, and when it comes to your kids, you should use it sparingly. That's something just to keep in mind, because man, it is so easy to just pop an iPad at the table when you're out to dinner, or just go, you know what, I can't deal with this, I'm going to pop on Netflix. But I mean, it's insane the amount of screen time that really all of us, but especially our kids in the developmental phase that they're in, that is a stimulant for their brains. And it was interesting just to see how that kind of played out with us. And even when we did get a video game system at whatever age it was like 30 minutes a day. It was very specific. There were lines for that.
It's cool to hear that you've got a reflection on that now, and you're saying, hey, although I didn't like it at the time, I can appreciate it now.
Exactly. A blog you could find on KirbyAndersen.com that you've written about this is called Establishing a Family Policy for Screen Time. So if you want to read a little bit more, I know there's a link to recommendations for how much screen time kids should get. It will shock you. I mean, it will completely be a disorienting thing when you see how much is recommended, because it's very little. And I mean, it's hours and hours of screen time that kids are getting now. So that's the first thing.
Wow. Now, when you were about 3, we moved up to Wisconsin, and we were living basically in the country, 12 miles out of town. versus being born here and being raised in Tulsa,
Yeah.
right in the city.
Yeah.
And that was a huge change, and there were some things, you know, we just didn't leave home that often. It was very interesting. But what was your reaction of being up there in Wisconsin, out in the country?
You know, kind of tying in with screen time, we were allowed to explore. We had that independence, so we lived on a lot of land, but man, it wasn't just, hey, you can't watch TV, so just sit down and be quiet or whatever. I mean, there was some open-ended boundaries of what we were enabled to do and what we were encouraged to do. Encourage your kids to build things, to cook, to explore. You've talked about garage parties. That was a huge thing for us. It would have come out on rainy days, go out and skate around in the garage or whatever. But it wasn't like, oh man, we can't do anything today. Our plans are canceled. Let's just flip on the TV. Much higher return than screen time to give your kids the independence to explore. There's a lot of parents today that are so sensitive with their kids at playground. It's like they can't be within outside of 3 feet of them. They're just worried. Just give them some space. They're fine. It'll be fine. And a blog that you've talked about with this, which I love the title of, is How to Minimize Mom, I'm Bored. And that's a huge deal, because so much of the time you think, all I've got, you know, my life is entertaining kids, and help them to understand they can do it on their own and without a screen.
That's right. From my standpoint, I always say that my kids came alive when we moved up to Wisconsin and they were out in the country. Now, granted, there were things they were missing. We weren't going out to eat all the time. We weren't driving into town all the time to do things and run errands. But they had so much time, not only to explore the outside, but explore music. That's why they're all such great musicians today, homeschooling and having that free time to do that.
Yeah.
But as I look at the 5 of you, 5 kids, everybody had totally different personalities.
Yeah.
And that was always a struggle for me, of course, as
Yeah.
mom. How am I going to meet those needs? How am I going to educate them? How am I going to discipline them? How am I going to motivate them? Give me some reflection on that.
I would say that you did this well, and anybody who's watching, a good thing is to know the difference between your general parenting tactics and the specific parenting tactics for communicating more effectively with your kids. Be a student of your kids' personalities and help them to develop their uniqueness. It is tough, but because there are going to be things where you go, this is a household rule, this is just, you know, I don't care who you are, what you like, this has got to be done for sanity. At the same time, when there is options to know what your kids' love language is or what they like to do to spend time together, they're not going to be the same. And you really, to be an effective parent, it helps when you are specifically finding out what is each kid's wiring and how do I connect with them on a personal level, more than even just a parental level, with just the general things of how the household is set up, but being able to understand what makes them tick. I went to be certified as a Myers-Briggs coach about 6 weeks ago, and it was fascinating to hear. Our teacher has done a lot of research on knowing personality types in kids. And as far as the Myers-Briggs thing, which is, if you've heard, it's the 4 letters, I'm a ESTJ or an INFJ or whatever, that's the type that you're talking about. But our teacher told us that she can identify type in kids as young as 6 months old, that you're born with your type, and that Myers-Briggs is all about preferences. It is not, this is what you are, this is how you're going to behave. It's about, this is your preference when you get to choose. But what's fascinating is that even at 6 months old, this is innate in them. So as I'm listening, I'm thinking through this with my 2.5-year-old daughter, and I know her type. And I know specifically there was something in how I realized how she listens differently to me on some things than she does my wife, because my wife and I approach her in different ways. And in order to get her to be to listen better to my wife, I had told my wife, this is how I approach her and why it works well, and this is something you should try. And she texted back in an hour, says, I just tried it, it's unbelievable. It's just an approach of how to talk to her and how her brain thinks and makes decisions. But that kind of stuff is powerful. Or knowing that one kid may enjoy coloring, one kid may enjoy exploring, one kid may enjoy just sitting next to each other, reading different books. Whatever it is, they're all going to be unique.
We just had a question on here. A gal asked, is there a tool that you can use for analyzing personality at like 6 months old, or even a young?
I would say that if you were to dive into, I don't have specific resources, and maybe we could try to find some of those things. It's difficult to take 4 days of intense Myers-Briggs training, and then I handle it very carefully because there's a lot of misconceptions and misinterpretations of things. So I hesitate to point towards one thing and say, here's a site you can go to. At the same time, when you understand what the types are, then you can look in your kids and see, okay, this is what this means. Just a quick, for instance, the standard misinterpretation of extrovert versus introvert is you like being around people, or you're more expressive, or whatever it is. The difference between extroversion and introversion has to do with how you receive and direct your energy. Are you more stimulated by the outside world? After a long week at work, are you more interested in going out with friends? Is that how you recharge? Or are you more, I need to stay home? Now, an extrovert sometimes can stay home and read books too. But again, the difference is not just, oh, he just likes being around people, he's the life of the party. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with how you receive and direct energy. So with your kids, then you can look and you can go, how do they interact with their outside world? How do they do this? And you spend enough time with them that you would be able to do that with a healthy understanding of extrovert, introvert, sensing, intuitive, thinking, feeling, judging, perceiving with Myers-Briggs. So it might be something that we could go into. But fascinating for me to walk out of that training a couple weeks ago and I now know my daughter's personality and what her preference is. And the thing is when I try to talk to her in a way which is not her preference, it's not that she can't listen. It just takes more energy for her to be that way. So anyways, it's just it's important to know. I mean, you've probably heard some of that stuff where it's like, your kids are all different and unique. But when it comes down to parenting, be strategic about becoming a student of each of your kids, because it will help you to connect on a deeper level with them. And really, honestly, it'll save you, as it has saved my wife, and even just knowing how to approach my daughter, it saves you from those bash your head against the wall moments. For instance, leaving a play place. I can do this in a way where my daughter does not like leaving. She loves to play.
What do you say? I want to hear this.
With her specifically, the wrong way to do it is to tell her, hey, Nellie, it's time to go. Let's get your shoes. It won't work. She'll fight, she'll cry, she'll do whatever. But what I tell her is I give her a 2 to 5 minute warning. Hey, it's almost time to go. Why don't you go down the slide 1 or 2 more times? And then when she comes down, I'll say, all right, 1 more time. And she understands, and then when she's done with that, it's like, all right, it's time to go now. But I have to prep her into that, and it's not about convincing her, but just this hard line, bam. What do we need to do right now is kind of difficult. Any suggestions on where to start to see where your kids are?
First of all, I would say I'm always recommending the book 5 Love Languages of Children by Gary Chapman, and that helps you because one of my children enjoyed going out and being bought a toy. The other one, I think, oh, I'm going to take him out and buy him a toy. And he'd say, could we just take a walk together? He just wanted quality time with me. So each one of them, when you spend that individual time, you want to grab what is significant to them. And it's the same way with discipline. I found that, one of my children, the best way to discipline him was to give him lots of housework. I hate to even say that, but I did. But then another one, I look at my granddaughter, and a discipline for her is she doesn't get to wear a dress today. That is pretty wild, but you know what? When you find all those keys which motivate and which discipline each child, parenting becomes so much easier.
It does.
Definitely.
You could start with a basic understanding of Myers-Briggs with the book Type Talk. But here's what I would encourage you to do with a hefty dose of political correctness behind it. Make sure that you really read about the differences between each of those types and understand those, because otherwise, if the foundation isn't right, it affects the way that you view your kids. And so that would be some place to start, and maybe we could do something follow-up on it. Another thing, as far as a blog to check on KirbyAndersen.com is ideas for spending time with your kids individually. There's some great stuff on there that would give you an idea. So that's that.
Cool. I really enjoyed the individualizing with each of my kids. And yes, there were rules that were, okay, you are not going to hurt a sibling, or this is your consequence. But there were just other things where you could individualize, and I absolutely loved being able to do that. From a child development standpoint, I think personality is developed before they're 4 years old.
Yeah.
So it is such a crucial time when they're young for all of these things, encouraging the good and trying to eliminate the not so good behaviors and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So it's really good to do that. So anything else you want to share before we...
The last thing that I think was interesting growing up is the importance of just simple special days. Backwards Day, Summer Day, Breakfast Day. Things like this seem so simple. I would tell you in today's day and age, there's a hefty temptation to throw the Pinterest-themed birthday party for your 2-year-old, and they're not going to remember it. It's more for you than it is for them. Let's be honest. And I would just say to let yourself off the hook a little bit when it comes to that, because to a kid, sometimes just the simplest thing means so much more to them. I mean, I remember putting on jeans backwards, having to zip them up behind me, and that's the kind of stuff I remember. I don't think of other grand things that maybe you would look at and go, well, that was awesome.
Yeah.
No clue.
That's funny.
Or it was the fact that we got up and throughout the day we had green eggs, or we had breakfast for dinner, or green day, green orange juice and all this sort of stuff. Those are the things that stick. Or in the middle of winter, turning up the heat to 90 and wearing a swimsuit in the house.
Yeah,
these are simple things. And you've got a couple of these listed in a blog post called Establishing Family Traditions. So hopefully that just lets you off the hook that there's some simple things you can do, that it doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be this crazy, man, I've got to dream up this amazing thing. And social media and Pinterest really kind of hurt with that, because there's that temptation that it's like everybody else is doing this stuff. Let yourself off the hook. Keep it between you and your kids. Keep it simple. Find out what they like. And those are the things that memories will be made of.
Yes.
Versus the impression that your kids, friends, parents thought of the birthday party. What does your kid remember? And it doesn't have to be complicated.
On that note, I'm just going to throw in one of my favorite things in parenting is to do usual things at unusual times.
Yes. Yeah.
Like waking you up at midnight for ice cream.
Yes.
There's nothing big about ice cream. You can have ice cream every day during the week, but waking you up at midnight was different.
Yeah.
Or, being able to be in your Sunday clothes and get wet in a splash pad.
Sure.
That is not a normal time, and the excitement for a kid and the bragging that they do to their friends about something like that gives you so much collateral with your kids. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's funny.
So much.
Breaking the rules is an out-of-the-box idea, essentially, for how to have fun. You don't have to go beyond. Just flex on the rules and. Yeah.
Yes. Thanks for your comments. Sure enjoy it. Well, thanks, Jesse.
You bet.
I just really appreciate your input. It's amazing. I've been prepared to be doused with things they didn't like as we parented them. And so far, we're not doing too bad. So that's good. I do have one other son to interview. That's Jared. I don't have his set up yet, but we will. But if you want to see my other kids' interviews, go back on Periscope or on my YouTube channel, which is Mentoring Moments for Moms. And if you want to get a hold of me, please email me. My email is in the profile here. My link to my husband's blog and my blog, KirbyAndersen.com, is in the profile. And you'll also find the link for that YouTube channel. So hope you'll join us and watch the replays. I sure see a lot of people watching replays. If you can't join live, watch the replays. It's fun. And thank you so much for joining us. Do something fun with your kids today. Have a great day.
See you later.